Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now what we have here is one of the best deals in budget gaming right now. A second-hand PS4 can be found for less than £100 and grants you access to a massive selection of amazing games. The one I have here is the original fat version, the same model I bought at launch with Watch Dogs. I spent about a week straight exploring Chicago on my shiny new 8th generation console, which I bought with the last of my savings. Probably not my best financial decision as an unemployed 19-year-old, but that was a problem for future Steve. As future Steve, I can confirm I was very satisfied with my choice. If you're looking for a used PS4 these days, then it's important you're comfortable with potentially opening up the console to clear out over a decade's worth of dust and maybe replacing the thermal paste. My one sounded like the main runway at Heathrow Airport until I removed the 4 torque screws and gave it a blast with the air duster. This alone solved my noise problem, but this OG will still be audible under load, especially when playing some of the more graphically impressive AAA games to release on the platform. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a good example. This will run with a dynamic resolution, the maximum being 1080p. It will target 30 FPS, though there will be drops below this, something not too uncommon from the base PS4. Of course, the Pro version of the console isn't wildly more expensive in a lot of regions these days on the used market, so you may want to consider that instead for improvements to resolution and performance stability. Now that said, we're not talking 30 FPS versus 60 FPS across the board. The Pro uses the same, albeit overclocked CPU architecture, so it's still somewhat limited in that regard. Performance improvements will depend on the game. Now that said, 60 frames per second isn't an impossibility even on our base console here, especially when it comes to remakes or re-releases of 7th gen games. Black Ops 1 and 2 recently got relaunched on the PS4 and PS5, and what a dose of nostalgia this was jumping back in. I started off with a few combat training deathmatches to sharpen my admittedly non-existent skills that have never really got any better since I first bought this back in 2010. I don't think it's just nostalgia that makes this seem great, it's just a simple golden generation Call of Duty game that you download, play and have fun. No modern nonsense and no bloated Call of Duty HQ or whatever, just a fun campaign, excellent zombie mode and fast-paced multiplayer. Sure, it's literally a straight 60 FPS port upscale to 1080p, but that's fine by me. While we're on the topic of nostalgia, I'd highly recommend Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. This remaster overhauls the original levels from the classic PS1 games. This takes me back. I remember seeing the mall level again for the first time, now dilapidated and dying, a sign of the times. To me, this was a sign of passion for the remastered project. It wasn't just a pure copy and paste of the levels. This also runs with 60 frames per second, and it hits that pretty consistently. Fortnite also performs smoothly on the base PS4, hitting up to 60 FPS, so if you're looking for a few free games to play, then this is certainly one of them, and it's one that will perform well, though of course it isn't perfect. It does seem to run better than the OG Xbox One version we tested the other day, and you're going to find that this is the case across a lot of cross-platform titles. Also, I have to say I forgot how comfortable the DualShock 4 controller is. It may not be as ergonomically satisfying as the Xbox controller, but it's a huge step up from the PS3's DualShock 3, in my opinion. Now, while it's more common to see 30 frames per second from this aging console, it's still surprising to see this 2013 machine hit that in some cases, especially in the more visually impressive releases. Red Dead Redemption 2 runs at native 1080p, and nearly 8 years after launch, I think it still looks incredible. The PS4 will deliver 30 FPS most of the time with solid frame pacing that makes the experience feel pretty smooth. On a modern 4K TV, it'll look even more stunning, though the Pro version will bring extra clarity, and the Xbox One X version with its native 2160p output remains superior. That said, well, just look at this. It's great on any platform, base PS4 included. I remember seeing Kingdom Come Deliverance on Kickstarter for the first time years ago, and from that point it became one of my most anticipated releases. I think the second game improved on everything that made the first enjoyable, but the original medieval RPG is well worth losing hours to in 2026. This feels like a 15th century life simulator at times, and quickly became one of my favourite games along with its aforementioned sequel. It looks beautiful too, which comes at a cost of course. It renders at 900p with a 30 frames per second target. Now, of course, it goes without saying that there will be drops from this. The Witcher 3 is another beautiful title that remains part of the generation-defining lineup for me. The fact you can pick up the physical Game of the Year edition for less than a tenner easily these days feels like a complete steal. I'll be honest, this has always felt a bit clunky to play in my opinion, though going back to a controller here feels way better than keyboard and mouse. Again, that's personal preference. I got this on day one and I spent about 8 hours playing it just doing side quests. I think I lost the whole week to it, to be honest. It feels a bit smoother these days. It's had various patches, but you should still expect sub 30 FPS quite frequently. Again, if you buy a used PS4, it's important to know what to expect from performance, and I find that my enjoyment of a game is not impacted by frame rate drops. Unless it's dropping to like 20 FPS every 10 seconds, then I'm out. The PS4 is also where I discovered some great exclusives like Spider-Man PS4. Excuse the footage, it may look a bit blurrier than it should, but my capture card decided it was going to record at 720p for some reason here. The game runs at 1080p, I think all of the time, so this was a bit weird. It is 30 FPS of course, but swinging through the streets of Manhattan still feels so satisfying, even to this day. I also picked up Drive Club for a couple of pounds. This is another PS4 exclusive, but it's one I've not played before. The visuals and sound design still hold up, if you ask me, but the servers were shut down about half a decade ago, and I kept getting a warning that it couldn't connect. So it's very much a single player experience, not to mention it's been unlisted and made unavailable from the digital store. It's a good thing the game came on this little round thing in a plastic box so that I can physically own it forever. Just a tiny selection of PS4 games there, a drop in the ocean of what is a nearly endless supply of entertainment. A lifetime of cheap games await. If you plan on buying a PS4 in 2026, then I have a few suggestions aside from the games. Now, you should give it a clean if it's a bit loud, because that may make all the difference. You should also see how much more a Pro console costs, and buy that if the difference is minimal and you have the budget to do so. And I'd also recommend perhaps an SSD upgrade. Now, an SSD will cut loading times and make the home screen interface a bit snappier, even though the console's older SATA 2 connection prevents the drive from reaching its maximum potential. Now, I think it would be worth it for the home screen improvements alone. I've always liked the interface, how it looks and feels, but it does seem a little sluggish with the standard factory-fitted HDD in the system. Now, it's not unusable by any means, of course, so an SSD is by no means essential if you are on a tighter budget, but it may be worth thinking about if you can find a cheap base PS5 and you have a little bit of cash left over. But let me know your thoughts. If you couldn't tell, then I am very biased. I love the PS4, same as my PS3 and PS2 before it. So it would be good to hear from you if this was your first console, or maybe you switched from Xbox to the PlayStation 4 after owning Microsoft's original console. Or the Xbox 360, of course, legendary in its own right. But let me know all of your thoughts down below. Thank you as always for watching, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.